if your time is just tapping out or dissociating from life, you spend your time on the phone, you spend your time on Instagram, you spend your time on Facebook, you spend your time on TikTok, you spend your time watching dumb videos, because your value is dissociation. Your time isn't necessarily social media, it's dissociation.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Don Macdonald, and it's my pleasure to bring you a podcast dedicated to the chiropractors who are not just about treating pain, but about making a profound impact on the nervous systems of their practice members. Thank you for joining me on The Informed Chiropractor. Let's get started. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Informed Chiropractor podcast for chiropractors. And we're back. We took a summer break. And actually, we ended off with Brandy, and we're lucky enough to have Brandy to come back. For those that can't see, Brandy's on Zoom, and she figured out how to use all the hearts and stuff. So she's using this. You'll have to see it on the YouTube video if you want to see her play with the special
I'm just doing this for the YouTube video.
Just for the special effects. It's totally cool. But
most people do not watch this on YouTube. Most people listen to it. So
anyway, I hope everybody had an awesome summer that was in North America and had an awesome winter that was down in Australia. And we're just coming into, we're in September now, and we're just getting rock and rolling, ready for the fall. We thought we'd just come on here and talk a little bit about what we're talking with some of our mentorship clients and our group, and then also just give some updates on what's happening to close out this year so that all of our listeners close off this year strong.
Amazing.
Yeah, we're getting into the second last quarter. So first off, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about our focus conversation we've had with our group?
Well, this is coming into the last quarter of the year. That's why you want to do this podcast. Why don't you tell the listeners what we're talking about? No, we're talking about focus. This tends to be after summer or winter. I know down under is a little bit different, but you guys would have the same experience probably after your summer and our winter. But for the rest of us that have just spent the last 2 or 3 months with our kids off school, out of routine, doing different things, on holidays, taking time off practice, everybody comes back, and there's this real weird lag of the first 2 weeks of September as everybody tries to organize their lives and get back into the swing of things. And then all of a sudden people sort of look up from their lack of routine and realize, oh man, I have no routine. I got to get back into it. It's amazing how people fall off. And, I've been talking to practice members about their businesses and the ebbs and flows. And they said, it's the same. Every September is the same. Every June is the same. Every December is the same. People behave in habitual patterns. It reminds me of when you watch birds flock together, or grasshopper. Mentoring clients is to really try to nail down people's focus for the last 4 months of the year and look at what really interferes with our ability to stay focused throughout, especially when it gets difficult, but to stay focused in routine over really 12 months, not just 8 months or 10 months.
Well, and I find too, focusing in on your focus is important to do it very frequently, because I know I am a victim of this, as well as many listeners out there, of the shiny object syndrome. And just as we go through life, often when we go on holidays and I start relaxing, I start saying, Brandy's trying to relax on holidays, and I'm like, hey, I got this idea. And then you have all these different ideas. And the problem is that there's only a certain amount of stuff you can do. So if you have all these half-baked ideas that you'd like to start, but you don't finish them, then old things that worked really well fall off the wayside. And then all of a sudden we're not doing the same things that created the success for us in the future. And so for me, I just visualize it like pruning the hedge of my brain, because it just grows like crazy if I don't prune it to kind of cut out stuff. And so Brandy's very common ask me, is that a priority for us right now? And I'm like, nope.
Right.
And she's like, should we be talking about that right now? And I'm like, no, we shouldn't. So I'm like, so it's she's my pruner to help me keep focused. But I know for some of those listeners out there that are kind of all over the place, it's super important just to sit down and kind of go, what's all on my plate? What is actually going to get me towards the goals that I want? And am I spending my time doing that, or am I spending my time doing irrelevant things?
Well, it's funny because I was just thinking, we were doing a call with our group around how to organize your time more efficiently and effectively. And I would say we've said over the years, and people say to us when you're an entrepreneur or business owner that time is money. And so I've often said, well, time is money. And then I'm realizing that is actually not necessarily true, because time is actually values. So time is only money if you value money.
And if you value time.
But time is actually values. And what I mean by that is when I get people to send me a time study, when they send me a week or 2 weeks of how they spend their time, particularly when I have heard that I don't have time for that, or I'm too busy to do staff training, or where would I fit observing in, or where would I fit all the extra staff meetings in, or where would I spend time training the associates, then I want to know, then what are you doing with your time? What is actually reflective in a time study is what somebody values. So if you value your children over everything else, you probably will find most of your time in your time studies of your off time doing kids activities. We see this a lot with families where when the kids are quite young and they're in lots of activities, they're spending all their time shuttling kids back and forth from sports or activities or swimming or tournaments. In Canada, hockey season starts, and they spend hours and hours and hours at rinks just sitting there watching their kid, even if their kid's not really playing or on the bench. So that means that's a value for you. If your time is just tapping out or dissociating from life, you spend your time on the phone. You spend your time on Instagram. You spend your time on Facebook. You spend your time on TikTok. You spend your time watching dumb videos because your value is dissociation. Your time isn't necessarily social media, it's dissociation. If your time is orientated towards your health, you're going to spend your time at the gym, right? You get my point. If your time is orientated towards your business, then we should see really hard block times of time in your week that are working on your business. And I would say about 1% of the time we will ever see that in a time study. And that tells us that people's businesses are not their top value. And now we've done a lot of work on values. That business does not have to be your top value, but I got to tell you, if that is your priority, that you are trying to grow your practice, or you're trying to improve your business skills or your acumen, or train new staff, or get better systems, you're going to have to sacrifice some of that time that you use elsewhere for higher values and put business in there as a lower value topic to use some of your time for the period of time to achieve what you want to achieve. So that has been our experience with doing a time study. And it's like, and if I've worked with people where they're working on their diet plans, or I've worked with people who are wanting a new workout program. When I do sort of some health and nutrition stuff with people, I ask them to do a diet plan. And what's really interesting about a diet plan is when I ask people to document a week of food for me, already, because they're thinking about it, they already change the way they eat, even though I tell them not to change the way they eat. It's just natural, because all of a sudden now you're putting your energy towards something that you haven't really prioritized in the past. And that consciousness alone changes your focus, and you haven't even done the work yet. So we find doing a time study for focus, just by virtue of having a little more awareness of where your time is going and what you value, that already changes some of the value hierarchy of the business stuff that you need to do if you want to get different results than what you're getting now.
Yeah, and I find when we're doing our 90-day mentoring with people, often we're trying to find out what their values are, and we're trying to link it. So we're trying to link their values to the business acumen, and also not only that, link that to what are the highest priority things you can do in your business to get the best amount of results for the time that you put in. And that's often, if you can do that, that's often why many of the people, we only do a 90-day program, because we don't work with people longer than 90 days, because we're big implementers. You need to implement this information.
People.
Focus, implementing. And often 3, 6, 9, 10 months later, we still see people growing and succeeding. And I think the reason being is because if you can focus on the things that make the difference, that are high in your values, that are linked to what's important to you, you're going to continue that on as you go forward. If you, for example, I've done that before, you've done coaching, and then you do stuff that's totally not your personality, and you're being coached and you're forced to do it, you will do it. But then as soon as you stop getting coached, you just go right back down. And so we've seen that a lot on our questionnaires too, is that when you are doing stuff that isn't in your values, you have to be forced to do it. And so if you have an ability to not only link it to the business stuff, but also focus on the most important things. That's kind of like, I think, a double whammy to get the best results.
Well, and the other thing is, if you rely on somebody to be your change agent, it's never going to happen. And that is why we don't do a year of coaching. We don't do contracts. We don't do contracts in our group. We're not change agents. We're focus agents, where we want to prioritize and dig through all the mire that people say interrupts their focus in whatever area they're trying to improve on. But then we want to leave and let somebody actually implement and be their own change agent. Somebody can't be your change agent. And so as soon as we think somebody is our change agent, two things, this is what happens in chiropractic. You don't want a patient to think that you're the one who healed them, because that puts you in a very, very bad situation when it doesn't work out the way they imagine it to. But the second thing is, it's just not the way it works. You don't heal people. Their body has the ability to do so when it's in a state of safety, neurological safety. It regulates and it does all sorts of beautiful things that have nothing to do with you. That's where we want to get people. And in your own life with change agency, it's really this ability to look at our own ability to dig through the mire and sacrifice things for a period of time that maybe we don't want to. I think people think focus is hard, because very often if somebody wants a different outcome, whether it's in their health, whether it's in their business, it's in their relationship, you're going to have to sacrifice a habit and or a routine or a way of behaving or a way of thinking or a way of feeling that has gotten you to where you are now. And if you're unwilling to sacrifice that, it's very hard to focus on what needs to be focused on to make the change possible that you can make on your own, really with a little bit more focus.
Well, I find funny too is that depending on what level of practice is, depending on what gives you leeway to focus on. So for example, if you're just starting out in practice and you want to be all focused on your art, but you have no practice members to practice on, that might be a little bit challenging. you kind of earn that right. And we've mentioned this before, but I always love that marshmallow study where they give kids the marshmallow, and if they can wait 10 minutes, they can get 2 marshmallows. So it's being able to delay gratification. And again, this is the thing, is that, as Brandy says, we're going to have to do a sacrifice, but realizing it's going to be a sacrifice so that later we get 2 marshmallows, so that we understand that there's going to be a benefit at the end of that. But in order to get there, we can't just eat the marshmallow, because if we eat the marshmallow, we're actually never going to take the amount of energy it takes to focus on the right things to get us where we want to go.
Well, and I think everybody's phase of practice is different. We're working with some students now who are really concerned about their artistry, which I think is amazing when you're in school, because we know that our kids are not necessarily getting artistry in student clinic. All due respect to student clinics, but they're getting it outside of student clinic. But the thing is, when they come into a practice, is that really the focus? Because who are you going to practice your artistry on? If you graduate and start a practice from nothing, from scratch, you have nobody. Your focus ain't your artistry. Your focus is getting people in the door. So it takes somebody to be able to process through the reality of what somebody needs to focus on to be successful. And that doesn't mean you sacrifice your artistry, but it means you sacrifice your belief system that that's the most important thing. Because it's not, because really, unless you have people in the door, there's nothing to work on.
I was just gonna say, in any sport, in anything, the purpose evolves from the reps. So you need the reps. And so when you have the reps and you have the volume, and then you have the leeway, then the artistry comes through. And I think that's the missing piece, is we can't have the artistry before we have the reps.
Well, I think as you mature in practice, then that does become, for a lot of people when we're doing our technique seminars, that does become then one of their focuses. They want to apply their artistry at a deeper level with different people. They don't want to be doing the same thing over and over and over. They want to understand the complexity of a lot of the people we're seeing today post-COVID. That's the work we're doing in Polyvagal and the Macdonald safety corridor. And so that's an evolution in practice, because now they've focused on getting people in the door, but now they want to be far more adaptable and deeper in the way in which they apply their artistry to people. And then at the same time, though, a lot of times in that sort of phase of practice, we're also working on a business acumen focus, because we found now that really you can be a very lucky, a very charismatic, even not so good artist and do okay in chiropractic. That is the reality of how powerful chiropractic is. You don't really need to see that many people to get some money, and you don't need to be that good at it. And that is not a slight, it's kind of a benefit. I don't think chiropractic would have survived had we not had that real powerful benefit we have towards touch, sort of that mainlining that we can do right into the nervous system. However, at some point, people do want to provide more, offer more, be more, have a larger business, be more successful, take home more profit. Now we have a business acumen focus. That doesn't mean their artistry is not focused on it anymore. That doesn't mean they're not focusing on a deeper application or marketing. It just means now we're trying to figure out the hard data of the business that perhaps they didn't and very often did not learn in school or even the years previous in practice. So the focus that you have matters. If you can't even verbalize what that focus is, that probably means you don't really have one. That doesn't mean you can't get through life without focus. You absolutely can. You'll find your time is your values. You'll fill your time with things that you like to do. They'll give you results. I mean, I think people think we're black and white. Life is gray. There's always gray areas, but the more that you can, I always imagine like digging through the mire and finding the focus through all the stuff, and it changes, and focusing for a short period of time on that, you just find the results are like on rocket fuel because you're able to do that.
Yeah, and we've seen that with a lot of people we work with. It's only like a couple days into working with them and already they get the focus on the right thing and things start changing like right away, and it's just like, what? Like,
but they haven't even done anything yet.
Yeah, it's just like a focus. So anyway, focus is gonna be the number one thing. Make sure that we get into the end of the year, get that focus narrowed in, and then that'll help to finish off the year. And so we'll just finish off the episode here, just giving people a heads up on what's coming up. We have our level 3, adjusting extremities and fascia, and understanding how fascia cooks into the neuroception of our whole nervous system to basically detect danger. And again, we use multiple different force applications to just be able to tie in the extremity adjusting with the stuff that we've built on in level 1 and level 2. For chiropractors, they don't need to have been to level 1 or level 2. We just have a little 1-hour program. We'll have them watch beforehand so they can get updated on the polyvagal work. Because you need to understand some of that language beforehand. And then, do you want to announce the other one that we want? Do we have?
Well, level 2 is in Windsor.
Yeah,
UK,
November 16th.
We're going back to UK to do our level 2. We did our level 1 last year. So same idea. You don't have to come to the level 1, although it's helpful if you did. If you didn't, we do have a precursor video. Level 2 is probably the deepest level we teach as far as technique, I would say. We really spend a lot of time because we've done so much work in the lens of polyvagal, the language of polyvagal, and the hierarchy of the nervous system. Level 2 is really, really, really in-depth technique, and really looking at primarily tracing the dorsal pathway of the vagus, with some key sort of indicators to the social engagement system. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. We're not stimulating nerves here. Same with the extremities course. I think a lot of people think we're like banging out knees and ankles. So you have to really understand the lens we wear when we're teaching this, or when Dawn is teaching this. And it's just a really unique way to apply your artistry, if we're going to use that word, regardless of the technique that you use.
And regardless of force application and analysis.
And the difference between those two, which most people do not know. So those are important, I think, to note, because we don't think we're going to do level 3 again as it is. So that'll be the last time we'll teach it in this model, it's just a standalone program. So if you miss Montreal, you're not going to see that again. And we're not coming back to the UK next year. I think we have been to the UK enough over the last couple of years. We're going to take a break from there. So UK people, this will be your opportunity to see us, and it's in beautiful Windsor. So even if you're not from UK, come over to London and come to Windsor. It's where the Queen lived all the time. It's a beautiful
Must
town.
Be cool.
Windsor is very, very cool. So those are 1-day events. We still have space for both of those. So, and that'll be your last chance. We're not just trying to blow smoke. Literally, we're not doing those next year. So FYI. This will be your opportunity, and the early birds will end, and the price will go up considerably because they're such small events.
And then the last event of the year for this year, we'll have our super conference in Toronto on December 7th. And this is going to be a really fun one because we kind of want to have the whole team together, because this is where we have, the chiropractor, the knowledge, the chiropractic assistants, the whole team together, providing that healing, safe environment. The better your chiropractic assistants know, I'm like the king of, you need to have your chiropractic assistants and managers be the best advocates for chiropractic in your office, because it took me 25 years to train Brandy.
That's his favorite thing to say.
I always love to say that, even though she trained me. But anyway,
I'm pretty sure that that's the way it worked.
Yeah, but just as a chiropractor, if you can practice in a practice that has like a support group around you, it just allows you to flourish. Especially if you have more of an amiable personality, it's super important. And so we create these super conferences so that chiropractic assistants can come together. In the afternoon, we're going to do breakouts. But the whole idea is going to be like getting this idea of polyvagal into your practice, creating that environment, helping your practice grow, getting better outcomes with your practice members.
Yeah, we basically try to take the best of the last couple of years of teaching and put it together for one conference with multiple speakers. And we called it Making Chiropractic Relevant Again. I find that one of the challenges we have had is taking information that most chiropractors have spent basically a second degree learning, and they don't know how to make it relevant. And relevancy is my superpower. That is my superpower. I am able to take complex information and make it relevant. The speakers we have, there's also their superpower in their own way. So we have Dr. Peter Kevorkian, who is now at Life West in a VP role. Excited to have him because he is the king of philosophy. And I think if you don't understand that there is a way to get what we used to call the old school philosophy, and as those mentors sort of leave chiropractic, we have to be able to transition to a model that is relevant not just to the public, but also to the younger generation of chiropractors that are coming up behind us who really think this is outdated. And I kind of agree, because the principles are the principles, and they will never, ever be killed, but they definitely can be more relevant. So Peter's going to teach that. Don is going to teach how to take a lot of the depth of the artistry he's teaching and making that relevant to practice members in particular. Everybody wants to know, well, how do you talk about this while you're adjusting somebody? That's what Don's going to talk about. I'm going to talk about taking a lot of these concepts of distress, danger, threat, the nervous system, what's happened post-COVID, isolation, and making it relevant to a practice member or an associate or a staff member so that your practice really understands how powerful this information is. It sets you apart from, I believe, every other practice in the world when you're trained in this model. And then in the afternoon, Dr. Nicole Liederman, who is one of our clients, and we have known her since she was just a young doc teaching at Parker College of Chiropractic at the time. Nicole actually taught Don Webster's way back in the day. Nicole is going to be doing a technique breakout. Her practice and her specialty is pregnancy and pre and postnatal and pediatrics. So she's going to be doing a technique breakout that we've called the safe womb. And that's taking all of these sort of ideologies around safety and ease, particularly the way in which the mother interacts with a fetus and how chiropractic really impacts that through technique. And she does that with the docs. Dr. Peter and I will be taking the CAs, and we're going to be talking about the relevancy of business of chiropractic. A lot of CAs don't really realize that, because they get paid either way, what role they play in the business. And we don't really like to talk about the business because we just pretend that we're not running a business, but we actually are running a business. And we just think if we just give our CAs enough motivation and inspiration, it'll be enough. But so we want to really teach the CAs, what their role is in the business. And our special focus for CAs is going to be on pre-bookings. It's going to be on care planning. It's going to be on follow-ups. It's going to be dealing with difficult people, boundaries, those kind of things to really equip your staff when they go home to really be able to not only understand their role in the relevancy of the business of chiropractic, but become far more relevant for your practice members to make life easier on the chiropractor. So it's going to be an awesome day.
And I was going to say the most important thing is support you as a chiropractor, because there's nothing better than a chiropractor who might be a little bit on the amiable side of things, giving some recommendations, and then just having your chiropractic assistant just totally support you and just roll the ball forward. That is like a superpower if you can get both of you firing on all cylinders. So,
or nothing worse than a chiropractic assistant who is the opposite and having a chiropractor drop the ball. So that is why both the chiropractor and the CA will be teaching that class together to the CA.
Yes.
So that goes both
ways.
So that note to that seminar though, that is 50% sold out already. So that is something, because it's a team event, we do expect that to sell out. The other two still have space for chiropractors, but just heads up, that is definitely going to sell out in Toronto.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
Well, I hope everybody's had a nice little break. We're back at the podcast, and we should expect the next episode in a couple weeks. So thanks for joining me again on the podcast, my dear.
Anytime, Dr. Don.
Okay, for everybody else out there, have a wonderful day. Until